A millionaire CEO allergic to every woman alive. One janitor who changed everything. Before we begin, leave a comment telling us which city you're watching from. Enjoy the story. Logan Fisher entered the hotel's luxury suite the way a general enters a territory he already suspects of harboring the enemy. His eyes moved across every surface with the systematic precision of a man who had elevated the detection of disorder to something approaching a professional discipline. And then he found it. Dust. His eyes widened. His entire body went rigid. His lungs appeared to briefly reconsider their commitment to the breathing process. "This is an absolute outrage," Logan murmured, staring at the offending particle like it had insulted his ancestors. He did not waste time. He seized the phone and addressed the manager at the other end with the energy of someone reporting an active crime scene. "My room appears to be a decommissioned archaeological site. I expect this remedied immediately." The sound that came from the other end could best be described as a person swallowing a scream. Within 10 minutes, a hotel-wide mobilization had been triggered, the result of which was the immediate dispatch of one employee to restore order and prevent the complete psychological unraveling of the most important guest in the building. That was how Isabella Montero, equipped with a mop, a cloth, and an expression that suggested she had already assessed the situation and found it beneath her dignity to be alarmed by it, was delivered directly into the lion's den. She stopped mid-step when she got a proper look at him. Asterisk, good grief. How is it possible for someone that good-looking to also be that miserable? That's just cosmically unfair. Asterisk. Logan examined her with the detached curiosity of a scientist observing an unfamiliar species. "You have 5 minutes. Do not make a mess of it." 5 minutes. Isabella stared at him. Asterisk, what exactly does he want? Telekinesis? Asterisk, she swallowed the urge to make commentary about the timeline and got to work with the focused efficiency of someone who had been doing this long enough to make it look like an art form. Everything was going precisely according to plan until the universe decided to intervene. Reaching to address a corner of the table, Isabella's arm made brief, incidental contact with Logan's. The air in the room changed quality immediately. Logan went completely still. He stared at his own arm as though it had just informed him of something deeply alarming. Isabella blinked. "Oh, sorry about that." Logan did not respond in the conventional sense. He continued staring at his arm. "You touched me." "Accidentally, yes." "Do you need something for it?" "Antiseptic?" "A bandage." "You touched me," he repeated, and now his voice had taken on the specific register of a man confronting an existential complication. Isabella set down the cloth. "I am aware. Should I call someone, or—" "I'm allergic to women." She looked at him for a long, careful moment. "I'm sorry, could you repeat that?" "I have a documented medical condition. Physical contact with women triggers a systemic reaction. Rashes, respiratory distress, occasionally collapse." Isabella pressed her lips together very firmly. "So, I should be what? Calling an ambulance right now? Or would you prefer an exorcist?" Logan was not listening. He was waiting with great attention for the first symptoms to manifest. The redness, the shortness of breath, the full symphony of biological catastrophe he had come to expect. Nothing happened. He looked at his arm, then at her, then at his arm again. This doesn't make sense," he said, with the quieter bewilderment of someone whose entire framework for a situation has just been dismantled. Isabella could no longer fully contain her expression. "Well, it seems I'm your antidote. Don't joke about this. I'm being entirely serious. Though I am a little curious. How do you manage daily life? Does a flight attendant accidentally brush your shoulder and the whole plane has to make an emergency landing?" Logan's jaw tightened. "Usually, yes. But you," he pointed at her, and the pointing had the energy of a man filing an official complaint with the universe. "You touched me, and nothing happened." Isabella tilted her head. "Maybe the universe is trying to tell you something. This is a medical phenomenon. It requires investigation, right? Or maybe—" She gave him a look that was approximately 80% amusement. "I'm your soulmate. Logan Fisher processed this information with the expression of a man who has heard something so far outside his operational parameters that his brain has simply declined to acknowledge it. Then he said, with the brisk authority of someone who has made a business decision, "You're going to work for me." Isabella stared at him. "I beg your pardon? You're my personal employee, effective immediately. I need to understand this phenomenon, and you're the only viable subject." She looked at him the way one looks at a person who has just suggested something that should not be possible outside of a fever dream. "You think you can just hire me on the spot? Because your arm didn't itch?" "Yes." "Who gave you the right to do that?" "My bank account." Isabella breathed in through her nose and out through her mouth with the measured patience of a person who is choosing their response very carefully. "Right. I forgot that billionaires believe money is a universal purchasing currency for human beings. In my experience, it generally is. I'm not a lab experiment. From this moment forward, you are. And if I decline, I'll double your current salary. I triple it with comprehensive health insurance and an annual bonus in the six-figure range." Isabella opened her mouth, closed it, and then said, with the decisive energy of someone who has just made a pragmatic decision, "Where do I sign?" Logan's expression moved, briefly, in the direction of satisfaction. Isabella held up one finger. "But I'm not a trained dog. I don't fetch on command, I don't perform on cue, and I will not pretend to be impressed by you just because you're wealthy." "Noted. Dogs at least follow instructions." Her eyes went wide. "You are a genuinely terrible human being, and you're hired." She pressed the heel of her hand to her forehead. "This cannot be real." "It's entirely real. Welcome to your new position." Isabella looked around the room. The hotel suite, the mop, the impossibly handsome, comprehensively insufferable man in front of her, and accepted the fact that her shift had taken a direction she had not anticipated. "Fine," she said, "but you're warned. You just hired the one person on this planet who actively cannot stand you." Logan straightened his jacket. "As long as you don't cause me bodily harm during business hours, we'll manage." And that was how Isabella Montero, who had walked into that hotel suite to address a minor dust concern, became the personal assistant of the most neurotic billionaire in the country. She had absolutely no idea what she was walking into. The following morning, Isabella arrived with coffee, competence, and what she believed to be reasonable expectations. She was wrong on the third count. "What is this?" Logan stared at the cup on his desk, as though she had placed a biohazard sample in front of him. "Coffee. Freshly made, I might add. It's cold." Isabella looked at the cup, then at him. "I see. And would you prefer a formal written apology, or would a verbal one suffice?" Logan set his fingers to his temples and applied pressure with the deliberate slowness of a man counting backward from a large number. "My patience is a finite resource. So is my willingness to be spoken to like I've committed an international incident over temperature. I'm the CEO of a multi-billion-dollar enterprise, and I require my coffee to be hot. And I'm a former cleaning professional who requires basic human decency from the person signing my checks. We both have standards." She picked up the cup, walked to the small sink in the corner, and poured it down the drain. "Now go make yourself worthy of a hot one." The silence that followed was total. Logan stared at the empty space where his cup had been, then at Isabella, then back at the sink. "You just poured my coffee away." "I did, and if the moment called for it, I'd do it again." "Have you been terminated from previous employment?" "No, but I notice you go through assistants at a rate that suggests the problem isn't consistently them." He stared at her with the expression of a man recalibrating. "You need supervision. What I need is a boss who doesn't behave like a child who's been told no for the first time. What you do and what I need are different categories entirely. Make another coffee. You make one. You work for me. I'm your assistant, not your barista, not your housekeeper, not your emotional support animal." Logan breathed in through his nose with great deliberateness. "If I ask for hot coffee, I am entitled to receive hot coffee. And if I ask for a billionaire with a basic level of self-awareness, I'll apparently be waiting indefinitely." They regarded each other across the desk with the energy of two people who have simultaneously recognized that this arrangement is going to be either spectacular or catastrophic, and that the difference between those two outcomes is not yet determined. Then Logan laughed. Not a constructed laugh, not the controlled kind he deployed at business dinners. A real one, brief and surprised, as if it had escaped before he could stop it. You're genuinely insufferable. So are you. A pause. He looked at her in a way that was different from the way he'd looked at her before. Less assessment, more attention. Make another coffee. Was that a complete sentence, or were there words missing from the middle of it? He looked at the ceiling briefly. Please make another coffee. Isabella's expression was the specific expression of a person who has won something and is being very restrained about it. Since you said please. She made the coffee, and before handing it over, she took a small, deliberate sip of it. Logan's eyes narrowed. Are you sampling my coffee? Quality control. And also because you're annoying. He took the cup, drank, and set it down. And something in the line of his shoulders changed. Just slightly, just enough. You make good coffee, he said, with the grudging delivery of someone who has been dragged to the admission. I know. I'm good at what I do. Don't press your luck. Isabella smiled. And for reasons that neither of them could have articulated precisely, the morning improved from that point forward. Working alongside Logan Fisher was a study in navigating a landscape where the mines were everywhere and the map had been deliberately withheld. Isabella had adapted quickly to his particular brand of impossible, which meant she had developed a reliable early warning system for the moments when things were about to detonate. She was not, however, prepared for what he announced 3 days in. We're going out. Isabella looked up from the report she had been pretending to understand. Out. As in, outside the building. As in, we have a meeting and you're attending it. She considered this. Why exactly do I need to be present? Because you work for me. That was, technically, still a valid argument. She followed him to the garage, where a black car sat gleaming under the fluorescent lights. She looked at it, then at Logan, who was already moving toward the driver's side. You're driving. Correct. You're rich. Also correct. Rich people generally have drivers, and employees generally don't interrogate their employers about transportation choices. She got in, buckled her seatbelt, and said, I've seen footage of billionaires with performance vehicles. I'm a little concerned. If you keep talking, I'll rescind your employment before we reach the highway. Empty threat number 12. He didn't respond, which was its own kind of answer. The Fisher Enterprises building drew attention the moment they entered the lobby, but not the kind Logan was used to generating. The attention was different today. People were looking at Isabella, at Logan, at the space between them, with the specific expression of people witnessing something that contradicts a known law of physics. Why is everyone staring? Isabella asked. Because I'm here, or because they've never seen you walk through the lobby without an allergic episode and an emergency response team. Stop talking about it. I'm just saying I might be the most interesting thing to happen to this building in recent memory. He pressed the elevator button. You're the most inconvenient thing to happen to this building in recent memory. Tomato, tomato. They stepped into the elevator. The doors closed. A silence settled between them. Not hostile, but densely populated with things neither of them was saying, and the elevator rose 3 floors before committing what elevators in situations like this apparently feel called to do. A lurch, another, and then a complete and total cessation of movement, accompanied by a flicker of lights that reduced themselves to the dim amber of the emergency backup. You've got to be kidding, Isabella said. Logan pressed the emergency call button. No response. He checked his phone. No signal. We're stuck, he announced, in the flat tone of a man deeply opposed to the situation. Isabella sat down in the corner of the elevator with the relaxed posture of someone who has accepted the reality of what's happening and intends to make the best use of the time available. The last time I was stuck in an elevator, it was with an elderly woman who was transporting 2 bags of produce and 1 live chicken. I'll say this. The present company is an improvement. Logan remained standing. I have a conference call in 40 minutes. You'll need to reschedule. That is not an option. And yet, here we are. She tilted her head. You really don't like losing control of a situation, do you? I'm a CEO of one of the largest technology companies in the country. Unplanned events are errors. Unplanned events are just life being honest with you. He looked at her with the expression of someone who has heard a sentence they cannot immediately categorize. That's not helpful. I wasn't trying to be helpful. I was trying to have an actual conversation. She looked up at the emergency light, which cast soft, uneven warmth across the small space. Can I ask you something? I'm not going to stop you. Why did you hire me? Not the scientific explanation about the allergy, the real reason. He was quiet for a moment. Then he leaned against the opposite wall in what appeared to be a concession to the situation. Because you were the first person in a very long time who spoke to me without calculating the effect first. Isabella looked at him. The answer was not what she expected from a man who communicated primarily in imperatives and disappointed sighs. What's it like? She asked. Being someone everyone's afraid of? Efficient. She laughed. Is that the best word you have for it? It's the accurate one. He was quiet for a moment. My father built everything I now run. Before I was old enough to understand what I was inheriting, I understood that the inheritance required something specific from me. Not warmth. Not flexibility. Precision. Results. The kind of person who doesn't let things in. He paused. I became that person. Isabella listened the way she listened to everything, fully, without performing the listening. And the allergy? She asked. Began when I was 24. Doctors explained it as autoimmune. I explained it as irrelevant and structured my life accordingly. That's a lot of structure for something that must have been lonely. He looked at her sharply, then looked away. I don't think about it in those terms. Maybe you should. The silence that returned was different from the earlier one. Inhabited rather than empty. Their shoulders were near each other in the narrow space, and neither of them moved away. You make me think about things I've successfully avoided for years, Logan said quietly. That's extremely inconvenient. I know. It's one of my gifts. Something moved across his face that wasn't quite a smile, but was in the same neighborhood. He turned to look at her. The emergency light, her expression, the lack of pretense in it, and the distance between them became a thing with its own specific gravity. She felt it. He did too. And then the lights returned with decisive cheerfulness, and the elevator announced its intention to resume normal operation. And they both stepped back with the studied composure of people who have decided, by mutual silent agreement, not to acknowledge what had just been happening. Well, Isabella said, that was illuminating in several senses. Logan straightened his jacket. We don't mention this. Of course not. Good. Though for the record, you were slightly human in there for about 4 minutes. That won't be happening again. Sure, Isabella said, and the smile she was wearing as she walked out of the elevator suggested she believed approximately none of that. The following morning, Logan summoned Isabella with the economy of a man who does not use 3 words when one will do. His office door opened, and he held a binder with the thickness of a small textbook. Isabella stared at it. Is that what I think it is? The Logan Fisher Personal Assistant Operations Manual. Effective immediately, this governs your responsibilities. She took it from him with both hands, assessed the weight of it, and said, This is an autobiography. It's a protocol document. She opened to the first page. Rule number 1. Absolute punctuality. She looked at him. I've never been late. You arrived 32 seconds after me on Wednesday. That doesn't count. It counts. Logan, don't use my first name. You're going to charge me for syllables next, aren't you? He opened the binder to a tab section. My morning routine begins at 5:30. Coffee is prepared by 5:45. Schedule review at 6. Physical training at 7. Isabella stared at the page. This is a military operation. This is my life. You manage it. And what do I get in exchange for restructuring my entire existence around your timetable? You already have the salary. I like Fridays. He looked at her. Friday afternoons. Fridays. A pause. Deal. The next morning found Isabella sitting in Logan's private gym at 6:45, holding a cup of coffee, watching her employer conduct what appeared to be a personal campaign against the laws of physical limitation. Are you actually a CEO? Or did you retire from the Roman military? No response. He continued. She flipped open a notepad. Day 1, observation log. Subject demonstrates excellent form and zero sense of humor. Further study required. Are you taking notes? Mental ones, yes. For science. Take actual ones. You're supposed to be learning my routine. She clicked the pen. Noted. 6:53. Boss lifts intimidatingly heavy thing. Expression. Disdainful. Posture. Aggressive. Overall assessment. Logan stopped lifting. He reached for his water bottle, misjudged the angle, and pitched forward. The water bottle skidded. Logan's balance went sideways. And before the situation could complete its trajectory toward the floor, Isabella's hand had already closed around his arm. They both went still. Logan looked at his arm, at her hand on it, at his arm again. You did again, he said. You were falling. Reflexes. He stepped back carefully, staring at the point of contact. Nothing. I know. No reaction. Not even the preliminary stage. I know that too. He looked at her with an expression that was somewhere between confounded and compelled. This needs to be tested systematically. Isabella removed her hand. Define systematically. Touch my arm. She blinked. Are you serious? Deliberately this time. I need to confirm this is consistent. This is the strangest conversation I've had in a professional context. Isabella. She looked at him for a moment, then reached out and placed 2 fingers against his forearm. He watched the contact with the focused attention of a scientist conducting an experiment. 10 seconds passed. 20. Nothing. Logan exhaled, not with relief, but with the specific frustration of someone whose data has contradicted their model. This is medically inexplicable. Isabella withdrew her hand. Or maybe, she said, and her voice was lighter than her expression, your body's just figured out something your brain is still working on. He looked at her sharply. What does that mean? No idea, she said, turning back toward the door. Coffee's ready when you are. He watched her go and stood in the silence of a gym with a distinct awareness that his perfectly ordered world had developed an unfamiliar variable, and that the variable showed absolutely no signs of resolving itself. Later that afternoon, Logan looked up from his desk and found Isabella studying his face with the clinical attention she usually reserved for reports she was pretending to understand. There's something on my face? He asked. No, I'm just thinking. About what? About how you negotiated that contract this morning. She folded her arms. You didn't give an inch. I never give an inch. I know. I was watching. It was impressive in the way that watching something very cold and very precise is impressive. She tilted her head. Does it ever bother you? Being that person? Being effective? Being a wall? He set down his pen. Walls keep things out. That's their function. They also keep things in. Logan looked at her for a long moment. Then he picked the pen back up. We have dinner tonight. I'm not on your social calendar. You are now. Business dinner. You're attending. She sighed with the gravity of someone to whom this has already happened enough times to constitute a pattern. You know, most employers give their employees advance notice. You're notified now. Logan, don't use my first name. You are genuinely. I'll send address. She stared at him. You're going to keep doing this, aren't you? Just sending clothes whenever you've decided I'm going somewhere. It ensures an acceptable standard. I have my own clothes. Yes, and I've seen them. Isabella's expression went through several stages. You are the most presumptuous, high-handed, difficult person I've ever worked for. You've only ever worked in a hotel. My point stands. The dinner was at a restaurant with the kind of lighting and silverware that exists specifically to remind everyone present of how much everything costs. Isabella arrived having made peace with the dress, which was, she grudgingly admitted to herself, extremely well chosen. She was in the process of attempting to make her entrance with dignity when her heel snagged the edge of the carpet, and she pitched forward with the momentum of someone who has lost the argument with gravity. Logan caught her by the arm. She found herself briefly quite close to him, and noted with some irritation that he smelled expensive in a way that was not entirely unpleasant. Thank you, she said, straightening. Walk like a person. I was walking like a person. The carpet attacked me. They were seated at a reserved table, where 2 businessmen and an immaculately assembled blonde woman were already waiting. The blonde woman's name, Isabella quickly understood, was Samantha, and the way she looked at Logan conveyed the specific information of someone who had once had claims on a thing and had not entirely relinquished the feeling of those claims. Logan, Samantha said, with a warmth that was precisely calibrated. And this must be the famous assistant. Isabella Montero, Isabella said, before Logan could construct whatever diplomatic version he was preparing. I work directly with Mr. Fisher. How charming, Samantha said, in the tone that makes the word mean its opposite. The dinner proceeded through 3 courses and 2 separate moments in which Isabella had to stop herself from saying something that would have been accurate, but professionally inadvisable. The businessmen were pleasant. Samantha was not unpleasant exactly, but operated with the particular precision of someone whose pleasantness is tactical. When one of the businessmen turned to Isabella and asked what it was like working with Logan Fisher, she smiled. It's an extraordinary experience, she said. If your dream is to be professionally challenged at every possible turn by someone who expresses approval through the absence of expressed disapproval. Logan's hand tightened almost imperceptibly around his wine glass. Samantha smiled with genuine amusement for the first time. That's remarkably accurate. I thought so. The disaster arrived with the entree, as disasters tend to do when Isabella Montero is in a room with white tablecloths. A misjudged reach sent a sauce boat skidding across the table with architectural inevitability, leaving an evidence trail across the linen. Isabella's attempt to address this with a napkin produced a secondary incident involving the businessman's wine glass, which tipped, committed, and completed its journey directly onto the man's jacket. The table went silent. Isabella set the napkin down. I'm going to suggest we all agree to pretend this didn't happen. Logan closed his eyes. Let's go. Now. Now. In the car, the silence had several layers to it. Logan stared forward. Isabella looked at the passing streetlights. On the bright side, she said, nobody was injured. My reputation may have been. Your reputation can survive a wine spill. It survived your personality this long. He made a sound that was not quite a laugh, but occupied the same territory. I know you're going to say you should never have brought me, Isabella continued. I was going to say that, yes. And yet you keep inviting me to things. He didn't answer right away. The city moved past the windows in its steady, illuminated way. You make the events more interesting, he said finally, in the flat tone of someone delivering information they find personally inconvenient. Isabella looked at him. Logan Fisher. Was that almost a compliment? It was an observation. I'll take it. They drove the rest of the way in a silence that was different from all the previous silences, quieter and warmer, with more in it than either of them was quite ready to name. The charity auction took place 3 evenings later in a ballroom that appeared to have been designed by someone with a strong opinion about chandeliers. Isabella stood at the entrance and reminded herself that she had survived business dinners, stuck elevators, and a man who panicked about dust. She could manage this. Logan materialized beside her with the expression of a man who attends these events because they are necessary and has decided long ago not to enjoy them. You look like you're preparing for battle. I'm not sure this isn't one, she replied. Who's going to be here? Investors, board members, various people who need to see me and be seen by me. Anyone who will recognize me from the wine incident? Everyone who is at the dinner talks to everyone at events like this. So possibly yes. She squared her shoulders. Excellent. Good evening, Mr. Bradford, she said, as a silver-haired man approached with his hand extended. Logan, good to see you. Bradford looked at Isabella with the pleasant curiosity of someone who has learned that surprising people is possible. And this lovely lady, my assistant, Logan said. Just an assistant, Bradford repeated, with the good-natured skepticism of a man who can read a room. Isabella smiled. He hired me specifically because I'm the only woman he can physically make contact with without requiring immediate medical attention. Bradford blinked. I'm sorry. He's allergic to women, Isabella said. It's a whole thing, but apparently I'm the exception. We're still working out why. It's been a journey. Logan placed a very light hand on her arm and applied the kind of directional pressure that in polite society means we're going now. Ignore everything she just said. But it's all true, Isabella protested as he steered her away. Can you please have one public outing without describing my medical history to strangers? He asked. He was being polite, and I was being informative. Those should be compatible. The auction began. Logan paid attention to the items being presented with the focused attention of a man whose money serves specific strategic purposes. Isabella did her best to pay attention and failed comprehensively when a particularly elaborate dessert arrangement arrived at the tables. She was debating its structural integrity when the MC's voice carried a new item across the room. And for our next item, a private dinner with the distinguished Mr. Logan Fisher himself. Isabella choked quietly on a canopy. Logan did not move, but his jaw tightened by approximately 2 degrees. Did you know about this? She whispered. Absolutely not. Someone donated you. I am aware. The bidding began. It escalated with the speed these things do when the item in question is both rare and controversial. By the time the number had climbed to 150,000, the room had taken on the atmosphere of a very expensive theater. Then a composed, confident voice from across the room said, 200,000. Every head turned. Samantha Leclerc, one hand raised with perfect assurance, met Logan's gaze across the room with the expression of someone who has made a precise calculation and is satisfied with the result. The gavel came down. The room applauded. Logan did not. Your ex just bought you, Isabella said. I noticed. For $200,000. I was present for the bidding. Thank you. She looked at him sideways. How long ago did you two? Not the time. She looks like a woman who does not do things casually. She's not. So this dinner is not going to be a dinner. Correct. And you're going to have to go anyway. Also correct. Isabella drummed her fingers against the table. Take me with you. He looked at her. Why? Because 2 is better than 1, and because watching this is going to be the most interesting thing that's happened to me in years. Logan considered this for what appeared to be far longer than the question warranted. Fine, he said. You're coming. The dinner with Samantha was held at a restaurant where the menu prices read like a telephone number. Isabella sat across from Samantha and felt the specific, low-frequency tension of a room that contains 2 women with different but related claims on the same man's attention. Samantha was gracious in the way that expensive knives are gracious, beautifully made, and quite precise. So, she said, turning to Isabella with a measured smile. How long have you been working with Logan? About 3 weeks. And before that, hotel housekeeping. Samantha's eyebrow moved very slightly. Quite a transition. It had its dramatic elements, yes. Imagine. Samantha turned to Logan. She's different. Thank you, Isabella said. That wasn't necessarily directed at you. I received it regardless. Logan reached for his wine. Samantha tilted her head. I've heard some interesting things about your allergy situation, Logan. Or rather, her gaze moved between them with something that was professionally cordial and personally pointed, the apparent exception to it. Logan set down the glass. Samantha, I'm simply curious. In all the years I knew you, contact with any woman produced a reaction. And now, she gestured lightly toward Isabella. No reaction at all. It's medically fascinating. It is, Logan said, in the tone of someone who has decided this conversation is over. What do you think accounts for it? Samantha asked, and the question was addressed to both of them. Isabella said, I think the interesting question isn't the medical one. Samantha looked at her. Oh, I think if someone spent 20 years building a wall, and then one person came along that the wall didn't work on, she lifted her glass with the unhurried ease of someone who has nothing to perform. The more interesting question is why the wall was there in the first place. A silence settled at the table. Samantha looked at Logan. Logan was looking at Isabella. She's very direct, Samantha observed. Yes, Logan said quietly. The waiter arrived at that precise moment, glasses in hand, made a navigational error involving the rug, and the wine met Samantha's dress with the inevitability of things that are going to happen regardless of what anyone does to prevent them. The aftermath was brief and decisive. Samantha retreated to address the situation. Logan and Isabella were in the car within 7 minutes. For the record, Isabella said, that one genuinely wasn't me. I know. I want that acknowledged. It's acknowledged. She settled back in the seat. She's not done, is she? No. What does she want? Logan was quiet for a long stretch of the drive. She wants to understand why things are different. With you. And what would you tell her? He didn't answer for long enough that Isabella assumed he wasn't going to. Then, as the building came into view, I don't know yet. But I'm starting to. She looked at him. He was watching the road with the careful attention of a man who is thinking about something other than the road. She didn't push, but she kept the sentence with her, turned it over quietly on the ride home, and wondered, not for the first time, and certainly not for the last, where exactly this was all going. The days that followed had a different quality to them. Not dramatic, not punctuated by calamities or confessions, but different in the way that things are different when two people have stopped fully pretending they don't see what's in front of them. Logan was still demanding. Isabella was still irreverent. He still complained about the coffee in the first 30 seconds of every morning, and she still made it exactly the way he liked while maintaining the performance of doing so under protest. But there were other things now. He asked how she was. She told him about her evenings. He recommended a book without announcing he was doing it, simply left it on her desk with a sticky note that said Chapter 7 specifically. She read all of it and told him he had good taste, which he received without comment and which she caught him looking quietly pleased about. One lunch, several weeks in, they sat across from each other in a restaurant that was quieter than his usual choices, and the conversation went somewhere he didn't normally allow it to go. Tell me about your family, Isabella said. He looked at his water glass. My father built the company. My mother was present in the way that people are present when presence is one of the expectations a role comes with. I went to the right schools. I wore the right clothes. I developed the allergy and learned to operate around it. A pause. And I became whoever I am now. And who is that? A man who is very good at his work and has organized his entire existence around that fact. Is that enough? He looked at her. It was before. Isabella did not press him on the before. She understood it. My mother worked 2 jobs, she said. In the easy way, she spoke about things that were difficult. My father left when I was 9. I grew up watching her figure out how to make everything work with significantly less than what was needed, and she did it with a kind of cheerfulness that I still don't fully understand and will probably spend the rest of my life trying to replicate. She looked at the table. When I took the hotel job, she told me every job that's done honestly is a dignified job. I've been working on believing that. Do you? Most days. Some days it's harder. She met his eyes. The morning I walked into your suite, I was having a harder day. He was quiet for a moment. I didn't make it easier. No, but the situation got interesting, so it balanced out. Is that what you call the last several weeks? Interesting. Isabella looked at him across the small restaurant table, at the man who had spent his first day with her conducting himself like an authority on human behavior, and had since shown her, in fragments and intervals, someone considerably more complicated and considerably more worth knowing. I call it the best job I've ever had, she said, which admittedly isn't a long list. But still, he didn't answer. But he looked at her for a moment that lasted slightly longer than looking usually lasts, and she understood that something was being communicated that neither of them was ready yet to say with words. That evening, Logan was on the balcony off his office when he heard her behind him. The city was spread wide and lit below them, the kind of view that was designed to make everything seem manageable. You're not inside working, Isabella said, coming to stand beside him. That's concerning. I'm thinking. About work? No. She leaned against the railing. The wind was moving her hair, and the lights of the city were touching her face in a way that Logan, who had spent years training himself not to notice things he didn't want to deal with, was noticing with complete and helpless attention. About what, then? He looked at the city for a long moment. Then, about the fact that I spent 20 years building a version of myself that was useful and functional and extremely good at not needing anything. And then you walked into a hotel room to clean up a small amount of dust, and I hired you on the spot because my arm didn't itch, and somehow, he shook his head, somehow that turned into this. What's this? He turned to look at her, and his expression was the most unguarded she had ever seen it. The version of Logan Fisher that existed when no one was watching and which she had been catching, in pieces and fragments, for weeks. Every defense I've built for 20 years, he said. You walk right through without appearing to try. I don't know how you do it, and I'm not sure I want you to stop. He exhaled. I'm completely in love with you, Isabella, and I have been for longer than I've been willing to admit it. The air between them changed entirely. Isabella felt this sentence land in her chest with the specific weight of something true. She had known, in the way you know things you haven't said out loud. In a moment, she'd caught herself looking for him in a room when she entered it, in the particular quality of the mornings before she saw him and the mornings after, in the fact that his disapproval stung in a way no employers had before, and his approval, rare and spare as it was, mattered more than it should. I feel the same, she said. I've been fighting it because it seemed like a genuinely terrible idea, and because you're difficult, and I didn't want someone difficult. She looked at him, and here we are anyway. He stepped forward. She didn't move back. And when he kissed her, it carried the weight of every conversation and every silence and every moment that had been building toward this one. Not urgent, not rushed, but full of the particular depth of things that had been waiting a long time to arrive where they belong. When they separated, his forehead rested against hers. I'm done fighting this, he said. Good, she said. It looked exhausting. He laughed. The real laugh, the one that changed his whole face, and she decided she was going to spend a considerable amount of time making sure it kept appearing. The months that followed were, by almost any measure, the best either of them had experienced. Logan remained Logan, exacting, precise, constitutionally incapable of tolerating dust or cold coffee or the wrong kind of ambient noise in a meeting. Isabella remained Isabella, irreverent, cheerful, immune to his authority in the specific way that made the authority simultaneously less effective and more sustainable. They were not a matching set. They were not supposed to be, but they were extraordinary together. He smiled with her in ways he didn't smile with anyone else. She trusted him with parts of herself she kept quiet with the rest of the world. She made the office better just by being in it. Not because of the problems she solved, though she solved them, but because of the quality of energy she brought to the solving. He made her better too, though she was less willing to admit this, because admitting it would give him something to feel satisfied about, and he already felt satisfied about too many things. One evening, in a restaurant with low lighting and exactly 2 tables and the specific atmosphere of somewhere chosen with great care, Logan put down his fork and reached into his jacket. Isabella looked at the velvet box, looked at him, looked at the box again. Logan, let me finish what I'm about to say before you make any of the comments I can see forming. She closed her mouth. Since you came into my life, I have been less alone than I have ever been. Not less busy, not less difficult. Those are probably permanent, but less alone in the particular way that matters. He opened the box. I want to argue with you for the rest of my life. I want you to make my coffee exactly the way I like it, and then take a sip of it first out of spite. I want you to name my allergies and my bad habits out loud in front of investors, and somehow make it charming. I want all of it, because all of it is you, and you are the most unexpected and irreplaceable thing that has ever happened to me. Isabella looked at the ring, elegant, not excessive, chosen with the same care he applied to everything he actually cared about. You know, she said, you started a marriage proposal by saying you want to argue with me. Yes, because I do. Most people leave that part out. I'm not most people. No, she said. You're really not. She held out her hand. Yes, Logan. Obviously, yes. He slid the ring on, and the restaurant staff, all 4 of them, who had been hovering at a respectful but attentive distance, began to applaud. Isabella laughed and pulled him across the table into a kiss that did not care at all about the expensive tablecloth it was rumpling. The wedding took place in a garden. Isabella had been clear about this, and Logan had learned, across the preceding months, that being clear about things was a characteristic he respected enough not to argue with when the person was someone he loved. The day was warm, and the kind of light that makes even ordinary things look like they've been arranged by someone who knows what they're doing. Isabella wore something she had chosen herself, simple and exactly right. And when she walked toward him across the grass, Logan discovered that 20 years of training in maintaining composure had not prepared him for this particular moment. She reached him and looked at his face. "You're going to start crying," she said quietly. "I am not." "You absolutely are." "I'm not." "Logan." He pressed his lips together firmly. "I am composed." "You're very close to not being." The officiant cleared his throat. They turned to face the ceremony, shoulders touching, and Logan held Isabella's hand with the careful, certain grip of a man who has spent 20 years avoiding contact and has finally found the person contact was always supposed to be with. "Logan Fisher, do you take Isabella Montero to be your wife?" He looked at her. "Edo." "Isabella Montero, do you take Logan Fisher to be your husband?" She looked at him with the expression she wore when she had won something and was being very calm about it. "With great enthusiasm, yes." The garden filled with the sound of people who were happy on behalf of two other people, which is one of the better sounds available to human beings. Logan kissed her, and the 20 years of careful, meticulous distance closed for good. What did you think of Logan and Isabella's story? Leave your thoughts in the comments below. On a scale of 0 to 10, what would you give it? Subscribe to the channel and hit the bell so you never miss a story. And check out more stories by clicking right here on the end screen.